Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, racial discrimination is a scourge, not only because of its harm to individuals and communities, but also because it undermines the values of equality and dignity, it weakens social and national cohesion, it erodes trust, and it can threaten peace. As you know, and you have just mentioned it, 2023 is the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it is, when you look at the opening phrase of the Declaration, it says it very clearly that all people are entitled to the rights and freedoms without distinction of any kind, including on the basis of race. And this is one of the founding principles of the human rights cause, a principle that has been reinforced in the International Convention on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, the Durban Declaration and Programme of Action, and other instruments. As we honor and celebrate the landmark vision of the Declaration, we have an opportunity to reinvigorate it, to give it new life. And as we discuss the global crisis of racism today, to inject new urgency into the fundamental commitments to humanity that it contains. Mr. Vice President, I honor the courage and determination of the thousands who have stood up against racism and racial discrimination, and those who continue to call for it to end. When I traveled last month to Haiti, which, let's remember history, one of the first revolts by enslaved people created its foundation. It is an example of a country of people who emerged from a hard-fought battle against colonialism, slavery, and systemic racism, while continuing to confront their legacies. Around the world, many other anti-racism movements have been key to the human rights cause, including the struggles against colonization or apartheid, and more recent movements such as Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate. Yet, despite our many and important steps forward, today, no country can claim to be free of racism. So we must do more to combat systemic racism and discrimination that permeate social structures, institutions, and technologies, that deny equal access to justice, employment, housing, quality education, and safe and affordable health care, and that result in excessive use of force and racial profiling by the police, that cause refugees and migrants to be excluded, marginalized, and even returned to situations of persecution and danger. Mr. Vice President, earlier this month, I issued an open letter as part of my office's Human Rights 75 initiative, in which I urged member states to take specific and strong actions to deliver on the promise of equality and non-discrimination set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I called for the adoption and implementation of comprehensive national laws and policies and national action plans to eliminate racism and racial discrimination and to halt the rising wave of xenophobia, to ensure the effective participation of racial and ethnic groups in public decision-making, to make use of disaggregated data to better understand and address the consequences of systemic racism and discrimination, and to take action, concrete action, to confront the enduring legacy of centuries of enslavement and colonialism and deliver reparatory justice. My office's four-point agenda towards transformative change for racial justice and equality and the program of activities of the International Decade for People of African Descent provide further recommendations. In terms of the global anti-racism architecture, there are also steps that we can take. The newly established Permanent Forum of People of African Descent and the elaboration of a United Nations Declaration on the Promotion, Protection, and Full Respect of the Human Rights of People of African Descent are important opportunities for progress. So is the elaboration of a draft additional protocol to the International Convention on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, criminalizing acts of a racist and xenophobic nature. I call on member states to support and to finalize expeditiously those processes. And as the coordinator of the International Decade for People of African Descent, I wish to see efforts towards recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent pursued beyond 2024. Mr. Vice President, we are at a critical juncture. I would urge that we use the opportunity that we have this year, in this anniversary year, to eliminate the crushing injustice of racism and racial discrimination. It is urgent that the international community join forces to push back against intolerance, hatred, bigotry, and violence. By unlearning bias, by having difficult conversations, by reckoning with the past, and ultimately by caring for and respecting our fellow human beings. Together, we have the chance to reimagine the commitments of the Universal Declaration and build societies, foster societies that are centered on dignity and equality for all. Thank you.